Welcome back to the Bloomberg Google Hangout here at the U.S. Africa Business Forum in the Mandarin Hotel in Washington, D.C. I'm joined now by Tshepo Mahloele from Harith.
Thank you.
And former U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, Don Gips. I want to talk a little bit about some of the infrastructure problems and challenges in Africa, particularly in South Africa, but in some other places. What do you think is the solution for South Africans? Let me start with you, Ambassador Gips, in terms of having reliable power sources, because that seems to be such an impediment to other parts of daily life, communication, business, et cetera.
So South Africa is fairly unique in the continent in terms of actually having probably the majority of the power in Africa is in South Africa. And the problem is, because South Africa is industrialized, they're running at peak capacity, so they need to add. And I think even today in the news, there's discussion of allowing private power projects to come in to supplement. And I think that will make a huge difference in the ability to add capacity to the grid very quickly in South Africa. And they've done a great job on their renewables program where they've done that already. So I think extending that further will help solve the power issue in South Africa.
And you're involved in some, you manage assets of, I think, 2.5 billion, is that about right?
Infrastructure investments.
All infrastructure investments. So what's your thinking on that? And where does that power come from for South Africa? And is South Africa the priority, given that it's already so industrialized and there are other parts of the continent that are not?
Look, I think from a getting it done point of view, South Africa through the refit program has done a good job with regards calling for birds and getting the independent power producers to supply renewable power to the grid. And I mean they've had now over 3 invitations over those, and then each time the rates have come lower in terms of what has been bid. So from a success point of view, providing cheaper renewable project power, that has been good for South Africa.
And it's brought companies from around the world into South Africa to invest.
It has done that because if you look at even the whole process, how it was done, it actually won awards. So that is great. But the truth remains that there is still a shortage of power in terms of that. For a long time, there was no new investment in power project. But now this is happening. There are about, I think, 2 large power projects which are being constructed, each of about 4,000 megawatts. So that should do something with regards to trying to address that. And maybe the first power of that should come on stream within the next 6 to 12 months. So that should be good. But as they say, it's always more expensive not having the power. So whatever it comes at the cost, it's better than not having it. Because that the impact of that even on South Africa, we know that had that power been available, the GDP growth could have been about 2 to 3% better had that power been there. So therefore, it's a very expensive, power not to have when you don't have it. So.
But picking up on the other point, South Africa has more. It's the rest of the continent that needs the power, and Harith has been at the lead in doing that.
Yeah. Look, I think from the rest of the continent point of view, in terms of for the next 30 years, you're not going to be able to bring on enough power to address the need out there. And I think that's even from a commercial.
Because the explosive growth of population, the explosive growth of the need.
It is just not even there. It's as simple as that. So you're looking at what, at the rate at which the continent is growing, look at how much power they eat is not there. So therefore, only about 30% have access to solar power. So therefore, you need much more power to come on board. And at the rate of that growth of 5.5%, so it therefore means that you're just going to be lagging that for quite a while. But the truth is, across the continent, the different economies are doing very good things. With the support of the Power Africa initiative, we've managed to now close Lake Turkana wind power. It's the largest wind power project on the continent, but also in terms of size, it's the 3rd largest in the world. So therefore, to be bringing that type of amount of power in the Kenyan economy, that's great. They should do well in that regard.
Just to give you a sense of the scale, Liberia, it's said, I've never seen the actual data, but that when the Dallas Cowboys are playing a game in Dallas Stadium, they use more power than there is in the country of Liberia on grid. So it's a huge opportunity and a challenge at the same time.
Are we going to see this the Grandinga Dam project go forward?
It's a huge project. I think maybe it should be tackled perhaps like the way you maybe eat an elephant, but by
incrementally.
Not all at once.
Not all at
I try all at once with the elephants.
I also do it just because I have to end up paying for that. But I think what has to be is that it can be done in stages, Grandinga 1, 2, 3, and 4. So to that extent, they should be able to do it. But it's also very sad that, in this day and age, that type of project, which can, bring such a big change to the entire continent, to more than 7, 8 countries, and also have enough that you could even export some of the power, to south to the southern Europe.
All with green power.
Yeah, all with green power, that it is not being done. But, I'm fairly optimistic. 6 years ago, it's very different to what today is. And perhaps another 6 years. I've saw the announcement that, Blackstone made today and some of the entities made today, all the type of capital that they're looking at bringing into that market. It therefore starts making it possible that you think that those types of, ambitious projects can happen.
What is let me ask this whole summit's about U.S. investment in Africa. You've been so successful in getting Africans to invest in Africa. What's been the secret to that success, and how much do you go after external investment in addition to internal investment? What's the ratio that you look for? Is there a ratio that you look for?
I think if I could have more money outside of the continent, there's more money there than in Africa, so therefore that would be good. But like anything else, as I don't know, whatever you believe.
But am I wrong? You've been more
work,
successful raising capital in Africa than raising investment
than anywhere else. So, but I think for me, the story we sort of put out to African capital was that, look, South Africa has had fairly reasonable success with investing in its own infrastructure compared to the rest of the continent. And that has done a great deal of good for it. So therefore, we went to the other African economies and pension funds and said, before you have anybody investing in you, you first need to show that you believe in yourself, that you can take the first steps. And the best capital to do that was the pension funds. They can take a longer-term view. And for infrastructure, to build a road, a power project, whatever, you can't do it, with short-term money. You need a longer-term outlook. And the first person to do that was the best source of that capital is the pension funds. It's great returns, but it's also meets in with what you're trying to achieve in terms of returns. So that's the way we approached it. But that belief, I think, is now spurring on other entities to look at what what the African opportunity is. As I said earlier on, what we saw. The conversation we had 6 years ago when we started raising the first fund to the conversation I'm hearing today, I just think it's great, because it can only mean that another 6 years, our job should be great.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say, both as ambassador and then now at Albright Stonebridge Group, where I'm working with companies who are trying to figure out Africa and U.S. companies, how do we go into Africa? I've heard somebody else say this, so I'm plagiarizing, but they said there are 3 Ps to doing business in Africa. You need patience, because it takes a long time.
It takes a long time.
You need passion, because you got to believe in this to do it. And then you need a plan B. These are new markets, they're developing, things are going to change. I added a 4th P, because I think it's critical. You need the right people and partners. And you need Africans that you're working with if you're going to succeed in doing business. But if you have those 4 Ps, the opportunities are incredible all around the continent.
Can I ask you, you used the word opportunity. I want to talk to you about Africa growth and opportunity. There's going to be, at some point, a reauthorization, probably, of that trade agreement. What does South Africa have to do to make sure that it's part of AGOA going forward?
They've been actively working on that very question today. Look, I believe South Africa should be included. Now I can say this because I'm no longer in government, but I hope they also remove some of the barriers. Whether there's issues around poultry that people talk about, but I think it's more. And South Africa needs to do this for itself anyway. How do you make sure that it's as easy for foreign investors to come in and do business as possible? The growth rates in South Africa are not the same as they are on the other parts of the continent. It's a great place to do business. Rule of law is good. It's a great place to live, but they got to make it even easier. And I think then American companies will be 100% supportive of including South Africa in AGOA.
Ambassador Don Gips, appreciate you joining us. Tshepo Mahloele, appreciate you joining us as well. And all of you, thank you for joining us. We'll be back shortly from the U.S.-Africa Business Forum at the Mandarin Hotel in Washington, D.C. This is a Bloomberg Google Hangout.